Hello, Raptors Nation. Sean Davis here for the Raptors Nation, your home for everything Raptors. Well, the tankathon that me and Luca have been pitching, the Raptors clearly didn't listen, or, they just don't care about our feelings. Rip. Welcome back into the Raptors Nation podcast, your home for everything Raptors. Going to dive into a promising stint, but it's too little too late for promising stints. We're going to have I just know we're gonna have an amazing rant planned, where I hope Luca just continues to go on his Twitter rampage here live on the show. And there's a perfect way to introduce my co-host, Luca Rosano. As always, Luca, how you doing, man? And the Raptors aren't very good at listening, apparently.
Yeah, this incredibly confusing season continues as the Raptors have looked pretty good as a whole lately. They, of course, have won. I think it's now 5 straight home games, and they also went 3-0 on that mini homestand. But then when they took on a very good Bucks team, the best team in the league in my opinion right now, the Raptors actually made it a game, and I thought they were going to maybe sneak one away. And I thought in that spot that the Raptors were maybe going to get blown out, but I got to actually give them credit for the most part because they hung tough. They grinded it out. They almost pulled it off, but then the fourth quarter happened, and yeah, the Bucks just went on a run. Brook Lopez actually went on that run, and the Bucks just took it to the Raptors, and the Raptors lose a tough one. As now we are in the nitty gritty part of the season, just 10 games left. The Raptors trying to move on up. They can still get the 8 seed. They can still get the 7 seed. Hell, they could probably still even get the 6 seed because the Nets are just trending downwards, and there's obviously enough games, so they're not mathematically eliminated from the 6 seed. But it should finish. It should set up a pretty good finish with the Raps. Of course, this team, they're going to go for it. They're not going to tank at this point. They're going to try to move on up, and in all likelihood, they will make the play-in. That's unless the Pacers suddenly get hot and the Raptors fall apart. But yeah, 10 games to go. Raptors right now are ninth. The Bulls just beat the Sixers, so that is big for the Bulls. And it's go time for this Raptors team. I'm very interested to see how they're going to close out this last 10-game stretch, which is the toughest remaining schedule, as the Raptors are going to be taking on some tough teams, but then they're also going to be given some freebies. They got the Hornets a couple of times. So we'll get into the schedule more a little bit later on, and we'll give a prediction on how we see the Raptors faring. But yeah, the Raptors, grand scheme of things, been playing better. Am I entirely sold? No. Is my stand still the same on this team? Yes. Yeah, so that's basically where I stand right now.
I think even if the Raptors make the play-in, I think which I think, like you just mentioned, is probable. I think we'll still be, probably rooting for them to get bounced in that first playing game, stay the 9 seed or whatever, get bounced, and improve. Go ahead and improve those draft odds. I mean, that's what it is, right? I think we both knew it was very probable this team would make the play-in at least. So it's just more so, hey, it's like what's the outcome. But let's highlight a couple of guys really, really quickly here. Fred VanVleet been just phenomenal over these last 10 or so games, maybe a little bit more than that. In the month of March, just under 21 points per game, about 9 assists per game at around 46% from the field and 41% from three-point range. Luca, this is a guy that I feel like I've been a little bit more critical of, and one that we've been looking at to step up, and a guy that is in a contract year, turned down, I believe it was 4 years, $113 million this offseason in a contract extension. He's starting to figure things out. Another scenario where it might be too little too late. But Fred VanVleet, what are your thoughts on his recent performances?
Fred VanVleet's a smart man. He's getting his performance up just in time for maybe getting a big payday. He knows it's that time of year he's got to turn it up, right? So he's definitely been doing that. But no, all jokes aside, Fred's been really, really solid these last couple of games, and he's been carrying the Raptors. If Fred VanVleet has not had these type of performances, the Raptors probably don't win some of these games at home. Fred has been great. He's been shooting the lights out, and Raptors fans are just saying to themselves, Fred, where was this over the course of this entire season? Because if Fred VanVleet plays like this, along with everything else, the Raptors are in a much better spot right now when it comes to the Eastern Conference standings. And like you said, it could be too little too late. Has my stance changed on Fred in the grand picture? No, I still think this team is better off trying to get something to sign and trade or not paying Fred what he's going to be demanding. But let's take these performances at face value. Fred been doing a great job getting his teammates involved. 11 assists in that loss against the Bucks, had 23 points. He had some big outings when the Raptors were at home, getting crucial wins. Of course, over the likes of Minnesota, OKC, and Denver, who they destroyed. I mean, actually, all three of those games at home were blowout wins, something that's been very, very rare as a Raptors fan to see this season. But yeah, I gotta give some flowers to Fred over this latest run of his. I also got to show a lot of respect to OG Anunoby, and I got to give him his praise. I mean, OG has been phenomenal. Finally, we are seeing what OG Anunoby can be offensively on a consistent basis, and I just want to put this out there. We've said it many times on the show. I want to remind everybody where we stand on this. Scotty Barnes and OG, give these guys the keys to the car, invest, build around, really put these guys at your forefront because, I mean, man, OG Anunoby, I hope deep down he wants to be here. I hope all those rumors are just that, of being rumors, because I think the Raptors can still find a lot of value in a guy like OG, especially if they put more of the offensive duty in his hands like they have these last couple of games. So OG's been great. Scotty Barnes, he had a big outing against Minnesota, but unfortunately he had to leave the game against the Bucks with a wrist injury. He did not return. Now, x-rays did come back negative, but at the time of this recording, there's no concrete reporting of Scotty Barnes and if he's expected to miss time or not. So I'm hoping it's nothing serious and Barnes can come back, because that would be a huge blow to the Raptors over these last 10 games. And then I want to talk about Gary Trent Jr. as well. I mean, he has been great. And we talk about Gary Trent Jr. being so streaky, Sean, but man, oh man, like I tweeted out yesterday, when Gary Trent Jr. is playing his game and he's hitting these shots, the Raptors become so lethal. Like in that game against the Bucks, I honestly thought the Raptors were going to win that game because Gary comes in, he's unconscious from the field, he's hitting threes, really just giving the Raptors the much needed offensive punch, that much needed shooting punch that this team has desperately lacked all season. And when Gary is on one, this man makes such a big impact on this team. So Gary Trent Jr., I hope for your sake of wanting to remain a Raptor and get that contract extension, you play consistently down the stretch here for the last 10 games, and you really show the Raptors that you can be a long-term fit here. So he was great in that one as well. Jakob Poeltl, nothing bad to say about him. I think you and I can agree. The Raptors, in all likelihood, are going to bring him back, and I'm very fond of that move if that's the case, because Poeltl has given the Raptors a very big element that they've lacked for a couple of years now inside. And the last point I want to make, I know I'm going on a little bit of tirade here. Pascal Siakam. Let's just talk about the fourth quarter, Sean.
Keep going. Yes. This is what the people ask for. Putting the camera only on you. Yes, let's go.
Yeah. So Raptors 3 quarters in, they play a phenomenal game, and you're sitting there as a Raptors fan thinking to yourself, "Wow, are the Raptors really going to steal one here on the second night of a back-to-back against the best team in the league?" And then the fourth quarter happens, and it's so frustrating to watch on because two things. Before I get into the Pascal Siakam bit, Nick Nurse rolls out a terrible lineup to begin that fourth quarter where he has the likes of Will Barton out there. And with all due respect, Will Barton, I didn't know you were this bad. He goes 0 for 5, or it might have been 0 for 6, had so many good looks from the field, couldn't hit a damn shot. That lineup in the opening, I think it was like 3 to 4 minutes, lost this game for the Raptors because Brook Lopez went on an individual 8-0 run. The Raptors went from being up to all of a sudden being down. Then Giannis comes back in rested, and then you knew at that point the Bucks were going to just control this game as they did and win. And then during that stretch, you had Pascal Siakam, who in the first half was taking ill-advised threes and chucking up bad shots. But then in the fourth quarter, when you actually want your best player to be a little selfish and to make a play when the other team is making a run, he looked like he wanted no part in this game. You know, listen, I get it. He made some smart passes when the extra defender came, but there's also a time where Pascal Siakam gave up an open three and gave up some shots, some opportunities of him getting to the basket. And this is what I said on Twitter. If Pascal Siakam is your quote unquote best player, he's got to look the part. You can't continue to shy away in crucial moments. And it's not just a one-off here. This is a continuous theme with Pascal Siakam, and Raptors fans as a whole are starting to recognize this, that when push comes to shove, when the Raptors play good teams and these games are going down to the wire, Pascal Siakam is nowhere to be found in a big way come the fourth quarter. We saw it in the Lakers game. We saw it in this Bucks game. So many other examples that you can point to. And that's just simply unacceptable, especially for a guy who's going to be in line of being the highest paid on this team. And he's going to be in line for a huge contract next season. We talked about this on the show before, Sean. You really got to look at Pascal Siakam if you're the Raptors management and ask yourself, can this guy really lead us to a championship? I've always said it without any bit of hesitation. Pascal Siakam, tremendous second option on a team. He could be that B. He could be that Robin, but he isn't, that Batman. And we've seen it time and time again. So I don't know how the Raptors are going to handle this whole Fred VanVleet contract situation, and I especially don't know how they're going to handle this whole Pascal Siakam contract situation. But it's moments like this that you got to look at critically, because fans can just look at that and say, "Oh, you know what? Whatever. We'll look it through. We won't make it a big deal." But it's a big deal, especially when you're going up against teams like the Bucks, who you're going to have to beat if you ultimately want to make a run and compete for a championship. So I thought those two things in particular in the fourth quarter really hurt the Raptors. And as a result, the Raptors lose a game that they very well could have won.
Yeah. And well, first off, again, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said, especially about Pascal Siakam. I'm a huge fan of Pascal, but I'm not even, I guess you could say I'm a Paul George critic, but sometimes you hear the conversation like, hey, Pascal, Paul George are in the same tier. I disagree. Not just for moments like this, but Paul George, for one, has been better or been great for a way longer amount of time, right? The only thing Paul George and Pascal Siakam have in common is I think they're both 1Bs or 2s, right? I think Pascal is actually more of a 2. I think Paul George at his best is a 1B, meaning hey, he isn't solely if you need a game where he is the best player on the floor, or maybe not even a game. I think Pascal, I think that's what a 2 is as well. I think the separation is a 2 doesn't give you that 1B. You know what I'm trying to say? He's not that guy consistently, where 1B is in a 10-game stretch that a 1A 7 out of 10 times, but the 3 games where he's not, he's a 2, which separates him for what is that? We following along here? I feel like I'm losing, or I think I'm losing my point. But all in all, is he's not Paul George. He's not on the same level as Paul George. So you get all these tier maker and lists or whatever. People comparing to Paul George. He's not Paul George. He's just not, unfortunately. I think on a championship team, Pascal Siakam can very much be your second best player, where as long as you have another elite shot maker. And that's the problem with this Raptors team that we've been talking about all season long, is when Pascal Siakam is your best shot maker, you are in trouble, because first off, he's in a massive slump right now. Like I pointed out, I don't know if I've said this on the stream, on the show, or just off camera. Past 10 games, only averaging under 18 points off 42% shooting from the field. That's your best player. Can you imagine? And again, it's LA, but can you imagine if Anthony Davis over a 10-game stretch, I think he's a 1B, because same reason why Paul George, 7 out of 10, he's elite of the elite. But you get those 3 games where he's just inconsistent. Can you imagine if Anthony Davis over a 10-game stretch averaged 17.5 points and shot 42% from the field? He would be ridiculed so much. He would not only deactivate all of his social media accounts, he would be on the first class flight to the Taiwan Basketball League playing with Dwight Howard if Anthony Davis averaged 17 points on 42% field goal percentage. So
that's a good point.
Pascal, great player, great number 2 option, but if he's your best shot maker And that's the problem with the offense that we've identified a lot recently. If he's your best shot maker, you're in a world of trouble because you don't get good shots anyway. So that's super, super frustrating. And then, I mean, on to your point again about OG and Anunoby. I mean, dude, past 10 games, 19 points, rounding up slightly there, but 19 points, 59.5% shooting, Luca. 51 from the floor, 51.7% from three. In every game this month of March, he has scored at least double digits, including a 30-point game and three other 20-point games, including 22 points against the Milwaukee Bucks. This is how you show OG Anunoby that, hey, look, I'm going to redeem your faith, and guess what? I'm going to prove myself right, and I can lead an offense because that's what his whole beef has been about. Like you mentioned, Jakob Pro's been great. He also had 20, averaging 16 and 10, along with a block in the month of March. Scotty Barnes, we can touch on him in a minute, but I feel like it's too late. I think that might be the title of this episode, Luke. It's just too little too late for everything. It's too little too late for Fred to get things going because even if he plays this well the rest of the year, if Pascal isn't playing well, your season's toast. And in terms of contract, we've both made up our minds, at least I hope the Raptors organization made up their minds. It doesn't make sense to pay him now. Gary Trent Jr. It's too little too late to get this, to get going offensively and to be consistent because, who knows if the Raptors have made up their mind. Gary's a little bit of a tougher decision than Freddie, but stuff like that. It's just frustrating. I guess that's just where I'm at on the Raptors team as a whole, Luke. It's just too little too late.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this a couple of times. I'll say it again. I think the Raptors have a lot of talent. When you look at this team individually, you think to yourself, like, how is this team right now ninth and on the verge of potentially missing the play-in? I think we've come to understand and see that although this team might have a lot of talent, they're just not a good fit with one another because you look at some of the reasons we pointed out. I mean, primarily, you got two guys in Siakam and Vanvleet who are on paper and contractually your best players. And those are guys that you continuously can't trust or lean on in big moments. And yet you have a guy like OG who has looked like he wants to have the ball in his hands and have more of a role offensively, whereas Siakam has done the complete opposite. And this whole run by Fred, I think it's perfectly categorized by what you just said. I think it's too little too late. I think Fred, this kind of sums up his game where he can have flashes of brilliance and suck you in, and then it won't be long until he has just a dreadful shooting night, and then you sit there and say, yeah, I told you so. So I think I'm past the part of, you're not going to be able to compete at the highest of levels when you have Siakam and Fred as your two best guys. I'm more interested to see what the future looks like, and by that future, I mean Scotty Barnes, OG, and whatever else looks around them, because you now have a big enough sample size to see that you won't be able to win at the highest levels with guys like this, with guys who aren't proven shot makers in crunch time, B-type players. The Raptors truly have lacked that A player, which, again, it's hard to get one of those players in the NBA, but yeah, since Kawhi Leonard, and nobody has come close. So unfortunately, that's the NBA today. It's a superstar driven league, and if you don't have an MVP caliber player on your team, the reality is you're not going to have a chance to win the NBA championship. And the Raptors, for as much talent individually they have, we've seen that can only take you so far. So look, I know we're kind of always looking to the future in the offseason. There's going to be plenty of time to speculate that. But I guess as of now, we'll see how far this team can go. We'll see if they can win these next couple of games coming up. We'll see where they stand in the grand picture. But I just think when it comes down to it, they won't beat the Bucks. They won't beat the Celtics. They won't beat the Sixers in a 7-game series. But, hey, we'll see if they can at least get there, right?
All right, I have a question. And maybe this is a very, very stupid question, but I think there needs to be a conversation about it. Who is the best player on that team that lost to Boston in Game 7 in the bubble? Because I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that was still Kyle Lowry. Am I crazy to say that? or basically the point I'm getting at, it wasn't Pascal.
No, it wasn't Pascal. No, he was like, that was a bad time for Siakam. Like, he was nowhere to be seen. Like, that was like his like very bad period. And then that's when fans were starting to say, wow, like, we really thought this guy could be what we thought he was going to be. And then he completely faltered. And then he came along gradually. But no, it absolutely was not Pascal Siakam. Lowry, you could have made a case. I would also honestly say OG, like, not to mention he hit the game winner in game 3, which if he doesn't hit that shot,
sure,
the Raptors would be down 3-0, and that's not a series at all. Kyle Lowry did make an incredible pass, though, over Taco Fall, which goes unnoticed a lot of times. But yeah, it definitely wasn't Siakam. It wasn't Fred VanVleet. So it was, a Kyle Lowry and OG, I remember being especially good in that series.
Yeah, look at the postseason stats from that run. Fred, I'm rounding up. Fred averaged 20 points and 7 assists and a hair under 2 steals a game. Kyle Lowry, 18 points, about 7 rebounds, actually, and 6 assists. During the regular season, Pascal's numbers were a lot better. Obviously, he was closer to 23 points per game, but Lowry, 19 points. Fred, 18 points. I forgot this team had Norman Powell. That's another reason why that team was just really good. Like, that team was deep. That team was incredibly.
Oh, the 2020 team? Yeah. You still had, the thing is, people like want to go back to that team. And here's the argument like some Raptors fans will make when it's like, I'll admit, like, Kawhi carried the Raptors to a championship. Like, you take away Kawhi, the Raptors aren't winning the championship that year. And then people will quickly say amongst this fan base, oh, but like, look at 2020. The Raptors almost won it there. But you got to remember, the Raptors still had the likes of Norman Powell, Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka. So that team looked a lot different than the one that we have now. So that like 2019 championship team, a lot of it was still in that 2019 run. So, I mean, this current Raptors team looks a lot different. And that's the reason why that, once Kawhi left, I knew, unfortunately, this team was going to have to wait to once again be a championship contender.
Yeah, and really, 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 really quickly. First off, like you mentioned, they literally had the exact same team, just take away Kawhi Leonard. The exact same team. I mean, obviously that this allowed like Pascal and OG to elevate a little bit and have bigger roles. But they weren't beating Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's be real. They weren't beating Miami, and they weren't beating the Lakers. They weren't beating... Would they be in Denver? I don't think they beat Denver either, or the Clippers if the Clippers didn't choke. So, like, winning a championship, I don't think that would have happened. But, it is what it is. All right, let's really, really quickly dive into Scottie Barnes, who did injure his wrist. It's really unfortunate because he had been playing really, really well as of late, Luca. He injured his wrist. I think right now he's listed as doubtful for Wednesday night's game against the Pacers, which is a monumental game. Luca, obviously, we hope that Scottie makes a speedy recovery and is able to come back into the lineup as soon as possible. Not even because we want the Raptors to win, as we've loudly have spoken about, but just to get him more reps and allow him to control more of the offense and continue to get adjusted to it.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I wanted to see how Scottie. I mean, it's not official that he'll miss any time. I'm hoping he doesn't miss any time because I would love to see Scottie Barnes end the season. Over his last 4 games, minus the one obviously against the Bucks, he was averaging 22.3 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.3 steals.
Wait, how many points?
22.3.
Wow, I thought I heard like a glitch or so. I thought my computer broke down for a second. Okay, my bad. Please continue.
No, he's been really showing us a lot of good signs. And if Scottie Barnes doesn't get injured yesterday, the Raptors probably beat the Bucks, and he probably steps up and fills in the gap that was missing with Pascal Siakam's lack of production. I mean, Scottie Barnes, like I'm excited for this kid, and I think when you look back at it, obviously you're going to look at the rough patches he had and, the sophomore slump, I think is going to be more of the case in this situation. I don't think Scottie Barnes is going to regress. I think we will see Scottie Barnes continue to get better. What I want to see more of from him is just like, and this is going to come with him getting older, of course, just a more professional attitude at times. Sometimes he tends to complain too much, and sometimes he does make uncharacteristic turnovers. But once he gets those things that usually come as you develop as a pro down pack, he's really going to be a very good player for this team. And I think you have something here with Scotty Barnes. Now, is he going to be the guy who is going to lead you to a championship? Even if he's not, he could be one of the pieces, and he could be the secondary guy who could lead to a championship next to the guy, who potentially comes in, whether it's via trade. It won't happen via free agency because the Raptors get nobody free agency, but via draft. So the point is, Scotty Barnes is a big part of this team, and yeah, he's been phenomenal. I hope he's okay. I hope he can play against Indiana. At the very least, I hope he can come back in the game after that. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing what the next, if things go the way that we expect it to go, we are seeing what the next version of the Raptors will look like post, a Siakam or Fred VanVleet, if that's the direction this thing takes.
Which again probably should be the direction this thing takes. Really quickly, sophomore slumps, and again he's starting to figure it out. Like, I don't have the numbers like post the slump in air quotes or whatever, but a top 10 player right now who went through a really, really bad second year, comparatively speaking. Now, granted, that team, and I'm about to reveal the player in a second, the team of the player I'm talking about, they went through a ton of stuff his second year. But Jason Tatum, like, sophomore slumps are not the worst thing. And if anything, you kind of get to see how for real this guy is. Can he endure that rough season and either figure it out mid-season or figure out, hey, what was the problem and how do I adjust heading into year 3? Tatum that second year, right, took a crap ton of long mid-range jumpers, right? And he just wasn't efficient on them. The biggest change Tatum made year 2 to year 3 was, okay, I'm going to shoot more threes, right? Or I'm not going to take out the mid-range or like the step back mid-range or whatever, but I'm just going to start taking more efficient shots. And that's what he did that year 3. He didn't obviously take that top 10 leap year 3, but that was the biggest track. And now I think undoubtedly, no matter who you ask, Jason Tatum is a top 10 player. In a 1A, I think, anyway. So I mean, sophomore slump, and I'm not saying Scotty Barnes is Jason Tatum. He's definitely not as good of a shooter or jump shooter in general as Jason Tatum, but that was just my analogy on sophomore slump. So there we go. Professor Sean Davis here. Analogies. There we go.
Yeah, and the exciting part is, I mean, it's still way too early to tell how far Scotty Barnes can go with his development. I mean, maybe he does take a quantum leap, and all of a sudden, this guy's talked about being a superstar. I think the beauty of some of these younger, raw prospects is, yeah, just sit back, enjoy for what it is, let it play out, and we will really see how he matures and materializes. But I think at the very least, Scotty Barnes will be a big piece of something bigger. Again, if the Raptors decide to take a different direction with the core of this team. So we'll see what happens there. But Sean, I did want to get into one last thing here before we close out. Let's give our prediction of how the Raptors will close out the season. There's 10 games left.
Yep.
Of course, the Raptors are 9th. You got the Bulls knocking on the door. The Indiana Pacers could potentially get back into this thing if they beat the Raptors on Wednesday. But 10 games left. Pacers, Pistons, Wizards, Heat, 76ers, Hornets, Celtics, Bucks. Get it out in front of you if you need to. What is the Raptors' record during this final 10-game span? And where do you see them finishing in the East?
All right, I'm going to go game by game. All right. So Pacers Wednesday night, that's a win. So 1-0. I think they beat the Pistons. The Pistons are super, super weird with the Raptors, but I think they beat the Pistons and finally get back to 500. I just think the Pistons really want to lose. I think the Pistons want to lose more than the Raptors want to win, and that's why the Raptors are going to win, because the Pistons want to lose that bad. I think they beat Washington, too, on Sunday. So Raptors get a little mini win streak going, build up some false confidence. I think they lose to Miami next Tuesday night. I also think they lose to Philly. I think that's a big game for Philly, too. Philly, like you just mentioned, they lost tonight. They're trying to battle for that 2 seed and get home court advantage at least through the second round, and that could matter in a potential Celtics Sixers second round matchup. So I think they'll lose that game. So wait, where am I? Am I at 3-2? Yep, I'm at 3-2.
Yeah.
I think they beat the Hornets both times. It's super hard to do that, but I think they beat the Hornets both times.
So that's
So
5-2.
5-2.
Yeah.
I think they lose to Boston the first time. I think they beat Boston the second time, though. I think so. Basically, either way it goes, I think they split with Boston.
Yeah.
They played Boston relatively tough this year, if I recall. Yeah, they lost by 6, lost by 2.
So that's
This
6
is the
and
time
3.
or 6-3. My bad. This is the game they finally get the win. And then, so where am I at? Oh, I'm at 6-3.
Yeah, you're at 6 and 3.
I think they beat Milwaukee. So
7 and 3.
I think
Wow.
7-3 is like optimistic. I think that's the like best case outcome is 7-3. I think if things get ugly, they could go 4-6. Like I think
Yeah,
I
just
think they
about
beat
to say.
Charlotte twice regardless. But like they could easily lose those last 3 to Boston and Milwaukee, and then like drop Detroit, drop Washington. Damn, they can actually win 3. There is a world where they lose to Indiana. Basically, there's a world where they lose to everybody not named Charlotte. That is a very real world.
Based on what you said, though, we'll take the 7 and 3. So that would put the Raptors at 42 wins. So that would probably.
I think that's good for 8.
So you think 8th? Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, unless the Nets completely fall off here, they've lost 3 in a row. I don't think they'll get 6, but yeah, they'll get 8 if Miami starts to pick it up a bit. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like they're half a game back of Atlanta right now for 8. I think 6 is out of reach. I think 7's honestly out of reach. If you really want 7, you got to beat Miami. But I think
Yeah, they're
7's
3.5 back actually. Yeah, that might be tough.
Yeah. I think 7's out of reach. That's what I said. Just get. I mean, what's Miami's schedule? Miami's schedule is kind of tough too. And Miami's actually they could move up. Like they got the Knicks twice, and the Knicks just lost. I know Miami's 3 games out of 5, but 3 games isn't a lot when you play the team twice in the last 10 games or whatever, or 9 games for them. So I don't know. Things are gonna get interesting out east. Luca, what do you think for the last 10?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the game against the Pacers is going to be huge. I think that really is going to set the tempo because I do see a world if the Raptors beat the Pacers. I could see them going as good at, doing as well as 7-3, like you said, because the one thing that's kind of gone the Raptors' way of late is they've been a tremendously good home team. Like I just mentioned, they've won 5 straight home games. They beat some Western Conference opponents, blew them out. I know that some of those teams are missing some key pieces. Well, actually, Minnesota was just heavily undermanned, but still, they were able to take it to Denver, take it to OKC, and then beat Minnesota. So yeah, if the Raptors beat the Pacers, I think best case, I could kind of see your timeline. Although I think you're being lenient with the whole Hornets thing. I think knowing the Raptors, they lose against teams they should beat. And what scares me honestly about that back-to-back against the Hornets is both of those games are on the road. So I think the Raptors definitely lose one of those. And I see a world where they could even drop both. You're calling me crazy, but that's how night and day the Raptors have looked lately in terms of home and away. And really, that's kind of been the theme this NBA season. Teams have been bad on the road. Just look at the Warriors. So I'm going to go officially. Raptors go 6-4. Okay. Because I am giving them 1 loss against the Hornets. Sure. And then, best case scenario, I could see that 7-3 mark. So let's say the Raptors go 6-4. That would put them at 41 wins. Yeah,
Same.
I agree with
that's
you.
8th.
I agree with you. I think ultimately the Raptors finish 8th. I do. And then at that point, all they got to do is just win 1 game to get into the play-in. And in all likelihood, I think they would play the Heat, which will be tough because I think Atlanta's going to fall off here. And then we'll get Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, Toronto. And then the Raptors lose to the Heat. I know I'm going ahead here. And then they have to beat either the Hawks or the Bulls to get into the playoffs, which I'm not making that prediction as of yet.
I think Miami gets 6 because I think Brooklyn's gonna fall to 7.
Actually, yeah, you're right.
So I think it'll be Brooklyn, Toronto.
Yeah.
if it's Brooklyn, Toronto, I think Toronto wins. Although, granted, I think they just played in Toronto, beat the hell out of them. Never mind. They haven't played Brooklyn since the trade. That's basically
Yeah,
what
they
I'm
haven't played this new version of Brooklyn.
Okay.
If Brooklyn's in Toronto, Raptors win undoubtedly. But if the game's in Brooklyn,
It's
it'll be
tough.
tight. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say they beat Brooklyn if it gets there. But then, so to wrap up the show, which series is the most competitive? So far, all three possibilities if the Raptors got the 7th seed and made the playoffs are possible. Milwaukee, Boston, Philly are all in play for a 2-7 matchup. Rank those three in terms of possibility of an upset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my stance isn't going to change. I know some people might think I'm crazy, but I would like a Bucks series. We saw how good the Raptors match up against the Bucks, how well they can defend Giannis. Although Giannis had a perfect triple double, he had a very quiet triple double, and the reason why the Bucks won that game was somebody else other than Giannis had to beat him, and that somebody else was Brook Lopez in the in crunch time. I think the Bucks, the Raptors match up with the best just because they have history and success of guarding and beating Giannis. So yeah, if I rank it, I'm going from least tough to toughest. I would go Bucks 3 being like the least tough, who I would want to see. Or sorry, that makes it confusing. Okay, Bucks I would definitely want to see. After that, I would go Philadelphia, and then the team I least want to see would be the Celtics. So Bucks I would want to see, Sixers after that, and then the team that I wouldn't want to see out of the 3, Boston.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the Bucks are the best team in the NBA, but I think the Raptors match up the best with them. Hence why, like we just mentioned, all 3 games have been super, super tough thus far. And I mean, the Raptors have actually played all 3 teams like relatively competitive. They actually have already beaten Philly very early in the season, albeit, but they beat Philly already. But so yeah, I think they would be competitive series in terms of like game to game. But I think for the most part, especially like a Boston series, we talked about this. I think Boston win like 5 or whatever, something like that. But Raptors Nation, a bit of a longer episode here, so I appreciate y'all sticking with us. If you guys are new, please just subscribe right here to the Raptors Nation YouTube channel. Ring that post notification bell as well. And go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to your podcast, and give us a 5-star rating and review, the easiest way to help out the show. Also, go subscribe to my man Luca Rosano's YouTube channel. There's a bunch of great stuff over there covering the whole league and not just the Raptors. So go make sure you guys check that out. As always, stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.